Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Monday, January 10th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Notre Dame game is in 236 days. The game against Michigan in 321 days. It was another busy weekend for the Ohio State football program. Defensive tackle Hero Kanu committed to the Buckeyes on Saturday. Brian Hartline was promoted to the passing game coordinator on Sunday. The early enrollee freshmen started arriving on campus on Sunday, including Devin Brown, Caleb Burton, Kai Stokes, Ryan Turner, Bennett Christian, as well as transfer safety Tanner McAllister. And the OSU men's basketball team beat Northwestern 95-87 behind 34 points from E.J. Liddell and 24 from Malachi Branham. But another thing that happened this weekend was the high school football All-American game. That was this weekend down in San Antonio. Buckeye Scoop's Marc Givler was there to see it all in person. Marc is my guest this morning. Marc, thanks for joining me.
Yep, good to be here.
So I guess let's start with the Hero Kanu commitment. I mean, this was not a big surprise. This is something that we've been kind of saying, probably likely happening, maybe happened already in the past, and we can't, we're not talking about it yet kind of thing. He did officially commit at the game on Saturday. What does he bring to the Buckeyes?
Yeah, he's kind of exactly what they want in that one tech. They don't go for that 330-pound, big-bodied space eater unless that person can also move. And so I know that's kind of caused some angst. They don't take the bigger project type defensive tackles, those run pluggers. They just don't. And so if you can get a guy at Kanu's size, he's almost 300 pounds already. And with his quicks and agility and ability to shoot gaps and rush the passer, on top of having that kind of nose guard size, that's their ideal guy to play the one tech. And I don't think that'll probably change too much with Knowles. So that, maybe something to watch there, but this is a guy who you can line up pretty much anywhere on the interior of the defensive line. And you can ask him to stop the run. You can ask him to get after the quarterback. Just a very versatile, defensive tackle prospect with great size and a lot of untapped potential. He's only 17 years old. So he's going to be a very young player as a freshman at Ohio State. But a lot of upside here. And again, surprisingly advanced given his background, living and growing up in Germany and being born in Germany and not being over here until, I don't know, maybe a year or so ago.
So I think people maybe listening to that, hearing some of the traits you're describing there, may be thinking like, this sounds a lot like Tyleik Williams in some ways. I mean, can you kind of compare and contrast his game to Tyleik's?
Yeah, I think they are pretty similar type of players. Tyleik probably came in about 20 pounds overweight. Hero's coming in maybe a few pounds underweight, which is actually a good thing. They can build him up a little bit easier. Tremendous motor. Tyleik showed a lot of good stuff this year. As a guy, 315 maybe this year he played at, and can get after the passer. So there's a lot of similarities there. Again, Hero is going to come in probably about a year younger than Tyleik was when he arrived. So there's going to be maybe some adjustments there, and just the general nature of only playing over here in the United States, I believe the last 2 seasons. So there's going to be a little bit of growing pains maybe there. So I don't know if I would go out and predict maybe quite the freshman year Tyleik had, but I think the same level of upside is there. And I think they fit the same bill in terms of guys who have the size you'd look for in nose guard, but, could play the 3 tech. They're quick enough to do that.
If you've only heard us talking about him and have not actually read his name, his first name is Hero, Hero, just like a superhero. And his last name is Kanu, but it's Kanu, not like the boat. So it is. This is already kind of at the top of the list of great names in Ohio State football history. So he's going to be a fun one to cover. I'm sure we'll have a lot of fun writing headlines involving his name over the next few years. One of the questions around that all the defensive line recruits and pretty much the rest of the defense, in fact, right now is that 2022 defensive staff is not necessarily kind of in stone just yet. There's some questions around Kerry Combs. There's questions around Larry Johnson. And, are they 100% likely to come back? We don't know that yet. If Larry Johnson does leave, if this is the year he hangs him up, is that a concern? I mean, Kanu is signed, obviously, so he's got his LOI in, and Caden Curry has his letter of intent in, and, all those guys getting out of Jackson. You got a couple guys who are, they're still chasing. Amari Abor has not signed yet. If Larry Johnson does hang him up, is that a concern in terms of signing guys who are not signed yet and keeping the guys who are signed?
I think it's a little bit concerning for the guys who haven't signed yet. I think it's a little bit concerning for Amari Abor. I think it's probably most concerning for their pursuit of Christian Miller, who is still out there uncommitted and unsigned, deciding in February. That would not be a great thing, I think, for Miller specifically. Abor, I kind of look at that situation. I don't think Texas A&M's a real option. I don't think Alabama's a real option, and those were kind of two of his finalists. Maybe he could go to Texas. I just don't. I don't know that the options are necessarily there. I don't know that anything really makes sense there. So I would feel okay about that one. Maybe not great, but okay about that one. But I think Christian Miller is going to be an interesting one. The other guys have signed, and you just, you sit them down, you talk to them, and you hope no one, does something, drastic, like enter the portal within a couple of weeks. We've seen that happen a few times around the country the last 2 years, but Caden Curry's a lifelong OSU fan. I don't think Caden Curry would be in jeopardy. Again, Hero Kanu, I just think fell in love with Ohio State. He loves Larry Johnson, obviously, but fell in love with Ohio State on his little summer couple-day visit there. I think mom really trusts the entire program. She was very impressed with the official visit. She came over from Germany to take part in that. So with that in mind, and with Kenyatta Jackson, again, he's been so entrenched, and Ryan Turner coming with him. I don't think there's too much to worry about with a few of those guys, but yeah, you'd have to put some I guess some psychology or some therapy sessions, I guess, with the unsigned guys.
Yes. Turns out nothing is easy in college football these days. Who knew? You mentioned I was going to get to all the Ohio State guys you saw in person, but I want to start with Christian Miller, since we talked about Christian Miller a couple times there. He is someone he didn't participate, but I talked to Kevin Noon about him a little bit on Saturday's show or Friday's show, whichever day that was. It sounds like he made quite an impression even without stepping on the field down in San Antonio.
I mean, he's definitely an all interview team guy. He's always entertaining. You never quite know the direction the interview is going to go when you start it up. He'll make a left turn on you and he's a fun guy to talk to. Very personable. Very friendly. It's not an act. It's how he is. I mean, I know it's not a thing where the cameras come on and he flips a switch and, goes into a certain mode. He's like that when the cameras are off. He's just a high energy, fun guy to be around. I think right now I'm still going to go with the field, and not even so much the field. My instinct is he's going to sign with Georgia. But let's see what happens here. Definitely a few weeks left to kind of sort through things. Let's see what happens with Larry Johnson. Ohio State seems a little more, I guess, confident than maybe a month or two ago. Probably a little more optimistic than I am, to be honest with you, about their chances. So we'll see where things go. This would be icing on the cake. I mean, they've got 4 really, really good ones, and Miller would fit in perfectly with the other 4. You can get 4 of those 5 on the field together. It's not an issue. There's a lot of, different skill sets, varying skill sets there. So it'll be interesting. And now Ohio State's basically got these last few weeks where, yes, they're going to monitor the portal, and I'm sure they're going to keep an eye on maybe just a couple other guys just to see if anything pops out. If there's a defensive back available, if there's an offensive tackle available, it becomes available, something like that. But they really can kind of focus on Christian Miller here down the stretch, which will be interesting.
Well, you mentioned the 4 good defensive linemen they've already got in the class. One of them is Caden Curry. It sounds like Caden Curry was kind of like the standout, at least among the Ohio State commits at the All-American game last week.
Yeah, he really was. There were no days where I left the practice field thinking, Caden Curry was just okay today, or he did, Caden Curry wasn't as noticeable as he was yesterday, or, that never happened. He had great practice days every day, had a great game, had a sack, probably should have had 2. Stockton spun out a 1-4 on him there when he made a great move on the outside, and Stockton spun out, and then he, of course, made the sack the next play. So just a great week. One of those guys that, it's an all-star game. So you guys get a little bit, I guess, stat happy, where it becomes all about, the sack or, getting a pass rush. And Curry was constantly getting praise from his coaches during practices for doing little things that maybe don't result in a tackle, setting the edge, bouncing a guy outside, letting the teammate clean it up, kind of just doing his job and not necessarily just trying to get a sack every play, and was getting a lot of praise for his coaches on that too. So, I mean, just a total complete performance. He's going to have to put on a little bit of weight, about 240 right now, maybe probably depending what time of day you get him at, 240, 245 probably right now. I think he's gonna have to probably play at least 10 pounds heavier than that as a freshman, but I could see him getting on the field early, not so much as a starter or anything like that, but I could see him getting into the rotation a little bit. He's really good, and he can play anywhere. He lined up inside throughout the week, throughout the game on Saturday. He can definitely do that, especially in pass rushing situations. Coming from a great program, 2 state championships in a row, there's not much more you can really say about him. I just think, I think he's maybe the best pure football player they signed in this class. I don't really, he's the best prospect necessarily. I think there's a couple other guys who maybe have higher ceilings than he does, but I think he's the best pure football player they signed in the class. And I think he's a guy who can actually help them pretty early.
We were talking before the show, and you mentioned Devin Brown as another guy who kind of stood out, the quarterback. What did you see out of him this week? Because he's someone I don't think you had seen. You saw him at the Elite 11, but hadn't seen a ton of him before this. So what was it like to get to see him for basically a full week?
Yeah, I'd see him at Elite 11, but, quite frankly, I was out there watching Quinn Ewers, and, there's a lot going on. And so I watched him a little bit, but not with maybe the laser focus that I would have otherwise. He was committed to USC at that point. Got to watch really, I think, every throw he made this week in practice in the game. Very strong arm. I think the thing that stood out to me the most about him, I think probably 2 things. Like the first thing was how well he throws the deep ball. That was something that always jumped out to me about CJ Stroud when I watched him, both when I went out and watched CJ at his high school throw the ball around at Elite 11, and then at the All-American Bowl as well, he participated in. And Devin has a very similar skill in that, where it just throws those moon balls up there, and they always seem to come down in a position where his receiver can make a play on it. And so he did that very well this week. And I thought the mental toughness was really good. He had a really tough finish to an 11-on-11. I believe it was either Wednesday or Thursday. I think it was Wednesday. In practice, he had a little bit of a tough finish. He I think one was a miscommunication with the receiver and it ended up being intercepted. Then another one, he made a poor decision over the middle and misfired and was intercepted. So he, 2 of his last 3 or 4 throws of that session were intercepted. And then he came back in the afternoon and went and had lunch, came back in the afternoon, had one of his best sessions of the week. So it was interesting to me watching him navigate a tough part of the week and then come back and be strong. So he had other than that one session I just mentioned, he had a really good practice week. Things fell apart a little bit on Saturday with the offensive line breakdowns. I think he got sacked 3 times, so he kind of took a beating on Saturday, but I was really impressed. Good mobility. I think it's a really good fit for what Ohio State, wants to do. He does remind me a bit of CJ Stroud. I loved CJ Stroud come out of high school, so I'm a little bit biased on this one, but I think CJ maybe a little easier arm strength, just the way he can kind of flip it. But Devin's got a lot of the same traits, I think, as CJ Stroud.
There were 10, 11 Ohio State players, commits, signees who were there this week. Not all of them played because there was some COVID stuff going on, but of the guys who you got a chance to see, was there one guy who maybe changed your opinion, for the better or for the worse, the most during the course of that week among the Ohio State guys?
Yeah, I think the guy who, I don't know that he had a great game Saturday. It was a little unfortunate that it didn't kind of carry over to Saturday. Saturday was okay. He did get beat for a sack at Devin Brown's expense, but I liked mostly what I saw from George Fitzpatrick. He is, I believe, their lowest. I'm trying to go through the list here, but I think he's their lowest ranked offensive line commit. of the four. I know Hinsman's rated higher. Integra's rated higher.
I think Avery Henry's behind him.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. So he is. So he's the third. So he's the third high. So we got a couple guys. I thought George had the most consistent practice week. Tegra probably had a better game than George, but I thought George looked really good. He played left guard a lot. He's going to be a tackle at Ohio State. They only had 6 offensive linemen when the week started, so they were just kind of playing their best 5 wherever they could get them. And Hinsman was playing a lot of center during the week. He'd never shotgun snapped in his life coming out of a triple option offense, so he eventually was able to play right guard, which is a more natural fit for him. But with George, I wanted to verify the tackle frame. That obviously was there. Just quickly just pass the eyeball test, make sure, they list these guys at, 6'6", make sure they're not, 6'4", definitely 6'6", 275. I don't know if it looks bigger than that to me. So he's not light yet. I think that'll be very easy to get him to playing weight. I don't think he's that far off. Looked pretty good in the run game, which is like another thing. He's a converted tight end. So I'm like, is he physical? Did a really nice job in the run game, and actually even during the actual game on Saturday was his strength. A couple of his most of his breakdowns were pass protection related. So I like his outlook. I think Tegra, if he can get his body right, is probably the most physically ready. He's kind of in that. He's kind of I know they're different positions, but he's kind of in that Tyleik Williams range where it's like, okay, like let's trim you down a little bit first. But I think Tegra might be the most physically ready, and he's probably a guard, so he can kind of plug and play those guys a little bit easier. But I think George Fitzpatrick probably has the highest upside of the 4 offensive linemen in this class. I think his feet were really impressive. He moves very well. He did a lot of stuff, a lot of screen game work in practice, was getting out in front of plays, getting guys in space. So that was a guy that I was a little skeptical of, I guess, coming into the week. I was not maybe skeptical is a bad word, but just a little curious, I guess, coming into the week. I'm like, okay, which way is this going to go? Is he a tackle? Does he have the feet to play tackle? Is he as big as they say he is? Is he going to be completely overwhelmed coming from Colorado into this type of setting? And all those questions, I think, for me, were answered. So I think he's got a chance to develop into a really good player.
The fun thing about the All-American game is, of course, you get players from all over the country. So you get lots of guys you probably haven't seen before. Was there a player or two who's headed for another school, not an Ohio State guy, who you just looked at and went like, oh yeah, like I'm going to be seeing, you'll see him on the award show in December in a couple of years, regardless of what position he's playing, or, that's someone who could go in and like make an immediate impact wherever they're headed. Was there a guy or two like that for you?
Yeah, Michael Williams out of Georgia. Ohio State recruited him, didn't get a whole lot of traction there, but they did recruit him. This guy, man, he can play outside. He's one of those guys, he's already so big, but he's going to be one of those like 285-pound monsters that can actually play on the edge. Like it was really impressive watching him. It looked like they pulled him out of a Georgia practice and sent him to this game. And it's like, what's the sophomore at Georgia doing here? It just super impressive all week. The couple practices I was able to see him, and then had a great game, had a sack, at least one sack in the game. Was pretty disruptive there. He's the guy. Someone asked me on the message board this week, attach your cart to a horse who's going to be in the first round of the NFL draft. I said, well, that's always a tough thing to do this early, but if I had to, I probably would go with Michael Williams. He didn't have maybe the best week of practice. It was a little bit up and down, but Cade Klubnik, the quarterback going to Clemson, had a great game on Saturday. He was really sharp. The offensive line didn't always hold up for those guys on the West team, as we saw with Devin Brown taking a few sacks. Cade took a few shots, but the ball always seemed to be getting out quickly into the right spot. And I had seen him previously at Elite 11. He was very good there too. I think Clemson's getting a really good player there too.
Sure, that will thrill Ohio State fans to no end. Oh, good. Another good player on the defense at Georgia, and Dabo may have a quarterback again. But what good news for Ohio State fans in this lovely Monday morning. Well, Marc, thank you for joining me. You can find Marc and Kevin did a ton of content down at that All-American game. You can find it all at BuckeyeScoop.com. You can find it on their YouTube channel as well. They had a ton of interviews and highlight clips and practice videos and all that kind of stuff. It's all at youtube.com/BuckeyeScoop and also at BuckeyesScoop.com. They also did a bunch of podcasts. You can find those on the Gives in the Bank feed on whatever podcast platform you're getting this on. And you can also check out our, mentioned that YouTube channel earlier, lots of content there, lots of great shows there as well. And we're going to have plenty more to talk about this week. It's like, boy, this is the off season. And yet here we are, there's Bill Green is down in Florida. He was at South Florida Express 7-on-7 tryouts this weekend. He had a fantastic video interview with a couple of his South Florida guys who, if you watch the first one, you definitely remember the first interview with them. He did another one with them. It is very good. Lots of good information in there. And those guys are very entertaining. You can find that on our YouTube channel as well. And we'll have plenty more coming up later on this week. Planning to have Ross Fulton on again on the morning show to talk about the Ohio State defense. Probably try and have Bill on when get some insight from down in Florida at some point. And, boy, the Ohio State coaching search, carousel may not be done spinning just yet. The Jim Harbaugh situation is still up in the air. It's going to be Black Monday in the NFL today. And boy, won't that be interesting if there's Jim Harbaugh news on that front. So what a fun week this is shaping up to be. So make sure you subscribe to this show and all of our other great shows on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify. We're in all the places. And subscribe to all of our great shows. And also on YouTube, hit that bell, subscribe to our channel, and you get notified every time we post a new show so you never miss a thing. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.